The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was quiet for the first time in years. Representatives from 47 different worlds sat in their floating chairs, all eyes focused on the large screen at the front of the room. Ambassador Zexthara stood beside the screen, her blue skin darker than usual. The Velthani people always turned darker when they were scared, and right now Zexthara looked almost black. "What we found changes everything we know about our galaxy," she said. Her voice was steady, but everyone could hear the fear in it. 3 weeks ago, our research team was exploring the outer spiral. They were looking for new mining sites. Instead, they found something that should not exist. The screen flickered to life. Images filled the air above the gathered representatives. Massive stone buildings rose from a dead world surface. The buildings were tall and strange, made from black stone that seemed to eat light. Curved walls twisted up toward the sky in patterns that hurt to look at. Strange symbols covered every surface. "These ruins are old," Zexthara continued. "Not just old, ancient. Our best scientists say they are at least 45,000 years old. Maybe older. That means they were built before any of our civilizations even existed." A murmur ran through the hall. The oldest known civilization was the Korthani Empire, and even they had only existed for 30,000 years. Before that, the galaxy had been empty of intelligent life, or so everyone had thought. "But age is not what frightens us," Zexthara said. She touched a control and the images changed. Now they showed close-ups of the strange symbols carved into the stone. "We found writing. Lots of writing. It covers every wall, every door, every surface. And we can read some of it." The hall fell completely silent. Reading ancient writing was hard. Most old languages were lost forever. But 17 different research teams had worked on these symbols. They had found something impossible. "The writing is in 17 different languages," Zexthara explained. "All dead languages. Languages that died out thousands of years ago. But they all say the same thing. The same warning over and over again." New words appeared on the screen. They were written in Galactic Standard, the language everyone used. But somehow they felt heavy and dangerous. "They are sleeping. Do not wake them. We kept the vigil. The silent ones will return." The silence in the hall was complete now. Not one representative moved or spoke. The words hung in the air like a threat. "Who are the silent ones?" asked Representative Kor from his floating chair. He was old even for a Tashari, and his green feathers were almost white with age. "And who wrote these warnings?" Zexthara touched her controls again. This time the screen showed a different kind of image. It looked like a crystal, but it glowed with soft blue light. Strange patterns moved inside it. "We found this data crystal in the deepest part of the ruins," she said. "It took our best scientists 2 weeks to figure out how to read it. What we found inside makes the warnings look simple." The crystal's glow grew brighter on the screen. Then words began to appear. Not symbols this time, but actual words in languages they could understand. "The crystal contains fragments of historical records," Zexthara explained. "They tell the story of a species that once ruled half our galaxy. A species called humans." More murmurs filled the hall. No one had ever heard of humans before. The galactic database had no record of them. How could an entire species just disappear from history? "According to these records, humans came from a world called Earth," Zexthara continued. "They were bipedal mammals, similar to several species we know today. But they were different in important ways. They could live almost anywhere. Hot worlds, cold worlds, high gravity, low gravity. They adapted to everything." Images appeared on the screen. They showed creatures that looked a bit like the Tashari, but without feathers. A bit like the Velthani, but without the blue skin. They stood upright on 2 legs and had 2 arms. Their faces were smooth, with small eyes and strange mouth shapes. "They built cities on 1,000 worlds," Zexthara said. "They explored every corner of space we have mapped and many places we have not. They were builders and explorers. But when they needed to be, they were also warriors." The images changed again. Now they showed massive ships flying through space. The ships were huge, bigger than anything the Galactic Council had ever built. They had smooth, curved hulls that seemed to flow like water, but despite their beauty, there was something dangerous about them. "The records say humans were the most effective fighters the galaxy had ever seen," Zexthara explained. "Not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they never gave up. They would keep fighting when any other species would surrender. They would find a way to win when winning seemed impossible." Representative Korv leaned forward in his chair. "If they were so powerful, what happened to them?" "Where are they now?" Zexithara's skin grew even darker. That is the mystery. 40,000 years ago, they just vanished. Every human world, every human station, every human ship gone. All at the same time. No battles, no invasions, no natural disasters. They just left empty cities behind and disappeared into space. Perhaps they died out, suggested Representative Mira from the dolphin-like Aquari delegation. Disease, maybe, or some internal war. No, Zexithara said firmly. The cities show no signs of battle or plague. The humans just left. But before they did, they left those warnings. Warnings about something sleeping, something they were watching, and they called themselves the Silent Ones. The hall was quiet again. Everyone was thinking about the same thing. If humans had been so powerful, what could have made them leave? What could have scared them so much that they would abandon their entire civilization? There is something else, Zexithara said. Her voice was almost a whisper now. Something we detected 3 days ago. She touched her controls one more time. The screen now showed a map of the galaxy. Thousands of dots marked the locations of known civilizations. Lines showed the major trade routes and communication networks. It was a map everyone had seen many times before, but now there was something new on the map. A red line moving slowly across the galaxy in a perfect spiral pattern. It touched every major star system but never stopped at any of them. Long-range sensors detected this energy signature moving through hyperspace, Zexithara explained. It is unlike anything in our databases. The signature is massive, bigger than anything we have ever built, and it is moving in a pattern that will take it to every inhabited system in the galaxy. What kind of pattern? Asked Representative Korv. A mathematical one, Zexithara replied. Perfect and precise. It will take exactly 733 years to complete one full spiral, then it will start again. This is not random movement. This is the work of intelligence. Representative Mira's large eyes grew even larger. Could it be the humans? Could they be returning? We do not know, Zexithara admitted. The energy signature matches no known technology, but the mathematical precision fits what we know about human engineering. They always built things with perfect mathematical relationships. The red line on the screen continued its slow spiral across the galaxy. Everyone in the hall watched it move, thinking about what it might mean. Were the humans coming back after 40,000 years? And if they were, why now? There is one more thing, Zexithara said. The spiral pattern is not random. Our mathematicians have analyzed it. The signature visits every star system in a specific order. It checks the systems where we found the warnings first. Then it moves to systems where we found other human ruins. It is following a path that only someone with detailed knowledge of human history could know. The implications hit everyone at the same time. If something was following human historical sites, it had to know about humans. It had to have some connection to the vanished species. What are our options? Asked Representative Korv. We have sent scout ships to intercept the signal, Zexithara replied. But they are still 3 days away from making contact. Until then, we can only wait and watch. And if it is hostile? Asked Representative Mira. Zexithara was quiet for a long moment. According to the records, humans commanded technology we cannot understand. If they have returned and they mean us harm, our fleets would not be able to stop them. The hall fell silent again. Everyone was thinking about the same thing. The galaxy had been peaceful for thousands of years. Wars were rare and small. The Galactic Council kept order through discussion and agreement. But now they might be facing something beyond their understanding. What about the warnings? Asked a new voice. Representative Thane from the insect-like Zephyri delegation rarely spoke, but when he did, everyone listened. The warnings said the Silent Ones would return, but they also said something was sleeping. What if the humans did not leave by choice? What if they left to guard against something else? Zexithara nodded slowly. That is what frightens me most, she said. The warnings were not just about humans returning. They were about something else. Something the humans were watching. Something they did not want anyone to wake up. And now? Asked Representative Thane. Now we have expanded across the galaxy, Zexithara replied. We have built cities and stations in places that were empty for 40,000 years. We have explored regions of space that the old maps marked as forbidden. What if we have gone somewhere we should not have gone? What if we have disturbed something that was meant to stay asleep? The red line continued its spiral across the galactic map. Everyone watched it move, knowing that in 3 days they would have their answers. The scout ships would make contact with whatever was creating the signal. They would learn if the humans were truly returning, And if they were, whether they came as friends or enemies. But deep in their hearts, everyone in the hall knew that the galaxy was about to change forever. The age of peaceful expansion was ending. The Silent Ones were returning, and with them would come answers to questions the galaxy was not sure it wanted to ask. As the session ended and the representatives returned to their ships, the red line continued its patient spiral across the stars. Somewhere in the depths of space, something that had been waiting for 40,000 years was finally coming home. Captain Sarah Voss had volunteered for the deep space mission because she was bored. 20 years of flying trade routes between safe known worlds had left her hungry for adventure. When the Galactic Council asked for volunteers to investigate the mysterious energy signature, she was the first to raise her hand. Now, floating in her command chair aboard the exploration ship Meridian, she was starting to think boredom might not have been so bad after all. "Captain," called her science officer, Dr. Kethmore. The small furry Rillan was staring at his screens with all four of his eyes wide open. "You need to see this." Sarah moved her chair closer to his station. On his main screen was an image that made no sense. A ship floated in the darkness ahead of them, but calling it a ship was like calling a mountain a small hill. The thing was massive beyond belief, easily the size of a small moon. "How big is it?" Sarah asked. "Approximately 800 kilometers long," Dr. Kethmore replied. His voice was steady, but his fur was standing up straight. Among his people, that was a sign of extreme nervousness. 400 kilometers wide. "The mass readings are impossible." Sarah looked at the ship again. It did not look like anything in the galactic databases. Instead of the straight lines and sharp angles that most civilizations used, this ship was all curves and flowing shapes. It looked like it had been grown rather than built. The hull was dark, almost black, but it seemed to shimmer with patterns that moved like oil on water. "Life signs?" she asked. "That is the impossible part," Dr. Kethmore said. "I am detecting thousands of life signs. Thousands. But they are all in some kind of deep sleep state. Their brain activity is minimal, but it is there." "A generation ship," suggested Lieutenant Parks from the navigation station. The young human-like Terran had joined the crew only 6 months ago. Maybe they were traveling somewhere and had to put their people in sleep chambers. Dr. Kethmore shook his head. "The energy patterns are wrong for normal sleep chambers. This is something else. Something much more complex." As they watched, lights began to flicker along the massive ship's hull. Not the steady lights of normal ship systems, but patterns that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The pulses started slow, then grew faster. "It is responding to our presence," Dr. Kethmore said. "The ship knows we are here." "How is that possible?" Sarah asked. "Our sensors show no active systems, no crew moving around." "I do not know," the science officer admitted. "But something is definitely happening." The lights continued to pulse, and now they could hear something too. A low humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was not quite music, but it was not random noise either. There was a pattern to it, a rhythm that almost made sense. "Captain," called Communications Officer Zara from her station. "I am receiving a signal." "From the ship?" "No, that is the strange part. The signal is not coming from the ship. It is coming from all around us. Like space itself is talking." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Put it on speakers." The bridge filled with a sound unlike anything they had ever heard. It was like voices singing, but the voices were not quite right. They were too deep, too complex, as if each voice was actually many voices speaking together, and beneath the singing was something else. A sound like machinery, but machinery that had been running for so long it had learned to dream. "Can you understand any of it?" Sarah asked. Zara worked at her controls for several minutes. "Some of it is in old languages, languages that died out thousands of years ago. But there are patterns I recognize. Give me a moment." The singing continued, growing louder and more complex. The lights on the massive ship pulsed faster, and now they could see that sections of the hull were opening. Not breaking apart, but unfolding like flower petals. Smooth passages revealed themselves, lit by that same strange pulsing light. "I think it is an invitation," Zara said finally. "The patterns match greeting protocols from several ancient languages. It wants us to come aboard." "That could be a trap," Lieutenant Parks pointed out. "Maybe," Sarah agreed. "But if this ship is connected to the energy signature the Council detected, we need to investigate. This might be our only chance to get answers." She made her decision. "Prepare a shuttle. Dr. Kethmore, you are with me. Lieutenant Parks, you have the bridge. If we are not back in 6 hours, return to council space and report what you found. Captain, Park said. Maybe we should wait for backup. The nearest council ship is 3 days away, Sarah replied. If this ship decides to leave, we might never get another chance. 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself piloting a small shuttle toward one of the open passages in the massive ship's hull. Dr. Kethmore sat beside her, his instruments recording everything. Behind them, Security Chief Rhaegar checked his weapons for the 5th time. The big Corvani warrior was nervous, which was saying something. His people were known for being fearless. The passage is big enough for our shuttle, Sarah observed, almost like they expected visitors our size. Or they built it for people their size and we happened to fit, Dr. Kethmore suggested. As they flew into the passage, the walls around them began to glow. Not electric light, but a soft, warm glow that seemed to come from the material itself. Strange symbols appeared on the walls, flowing past them like water. Some of the symbols looked familiar, though Sarah could not say why. Are you recording this? She asked Dr. Kethmore. Everything, he confirmed. But Captain, these energy readings are beyond anything I have seen. The walls are not just glowing. They are thinking. What do you mean, thinking? The patterns of energy flow match neural activity. The ship itself appears to be alive in some way. The passage opened into a vast chamber that took Sarah's breath away. The ceiling was so high she could not see it in the dim light. The walls curved away in all directions, covered with more of the flowing symbols, but it was what filled the center of the chamber that made them all stop and stare. Thousands of crystal chambers were arranged in perfect spirals throughout the space. Each chamber was about the size of a person, and each one glowed with soft blue light. Inside the chambers they could see shapes. People, but not like any people they knew. Humans, Dr. Kethmore whispered. They matched the descriptions from the archaeological records. Sarah moved closer to one of the chambers. Inside was a woman floating in some kind of liquid. She had smooth skin, no fur or scales or feathers. Her hair was long and dark and her face was peaceful. She looked like she was sleeping, but there was something more. Patterns of light moved beneath her closed eyelids as if she was dreaming. How many? Sarah asked. Dr. Kethmore consulted his scanner. At least 50,000 in this chamber alone. And I am detecting similar chambers throughout the ship. All humans? As far as I can tell. But Captain, these readings are strange. They are not just in suspended animation. Their minds are active. Very active. It is like they are all having the same dream. Security Chief Rhaegar pointed his weapon toward a sound from across the chamber. Something is moving. They turned to see one of the crystal chambers opening. The liquid inside drained away and the woman they had been looking at began to stir. Her eyes opened and she looked directly at them. Sarah expected her to be confused or afraid. Instead, the woman smiled. How long? She asked. Her voice was clear and strong and she spoke perfect galactic standard. How long what? Sarah replied. How long have we been sleeping? The woman asked as she stepped out of the chamber. She was wearing a simple gray outfit that seemed to fit perfectly. I need to know how much time has passed. Dr. Kethmore stepped forward. According to our records, humans disappeared from the galaxy 40,000 years ago. The woman nodded as if this was exactly what she had expected. Then it is time. Time for what? Sarah asked. Instead of answering, the woman walked to a section of the wall covered with symbols. She placed her hand on the wall and the symbols began to change. New patterns flowed across the surface and the chamber filled with a low humming sound. My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez, the woman said. I am the wake-up coordinator for this vessel, and you have arrived just in time for the most important moment in galactic history. More chambers began to open throughout the vast space. Men and women emerged, all moving with the same calm confidence as Dr. Vasquez. They spoke to each other in quiet voices, checking instruments that appeared on the walls when they touched them. We need to go, Dr. Vasquez said to Sarah. The others will want to meet you. They have been waiting a very long time for this moment. The others? Sarah asked. The command crew, Dr. Vasquez explained. They have been awake in the deep levels, maintaining the ship and monitoring the galaxy. They knew you were coming long before your sensors detected us. As they followed Dr. Vasquez through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves as they walked, Dr. Kethmore whispered to Sarah, Captain, the energy readings from this ship are impossible. It is using technology that should not exist. I know, Sarah whispered back. But Dr. Vasquez speaks our language perfectly. How is that possible? Galactic Standard was developed only 5,000 years ago. I heard that, Dr. Vasquez said without turning around. We have been monitoring galactic communications for the entire time we were asleep. We learned your languages, studied your cultures, watched your civilizations grow. We had to know when the time was right. The time for what? Sarah asked again. This time, Dr. Vasquez stopped walking and turned to face them. Her expression was serious, almost sad. The time to wake up, she said. The time to return to the galaxy. The time to fulfill our promise. What promise? Security Chief Regar asked. He had kept his weapon ready, but something about Dr. Vasquez made him want to lower it. The promise we made 40,000 years ago, she replied. The promise to protect the galaxy from something it cannot protect itself from. Something that is stirring again because the galaxy has grown too large, spread too far, gone to places it should not go. They reached a massive door that opened at their approach. Beyond it was a command center that made the bridge of the Meridian look like a toy. Dozens of humans worked at stations that seemed to respond to their thoughts rather than their touch. Holographic displays showed star maps, energy patterns, and readings that Dr. Kethmore did not recognize. A man in a dark uniform approached them. He was tall and had gray hair, but his eyes were young and alert. Dr. Vasquez, are these our guests? Yes, Commander Chen, she replied. Captain Sarah Voss of the Galactic Council ship Meridian. Commander Chen extended his hand to Sarah in a gesture she did not recognize. When she took it, he shook it gently. Welcome aboard the Eternal Vigil, Captain. We have much to discuss and very little time to do it. Commander, Sarah said, we need to understand what is happening. The Galactic Council is concerned about the energy signature your ship has been creating. As they should be, Commander Chen replied. That signature is not just from our ship. It is from our entire fleet. We have been patrolling the galaxy for 40,000 years, keeping watch on places your people should never go. But now those places are stirring and our patrol is no longer enough. What kind of places? Dr. Kethmore asked. Commander Chen looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. Places where reality grows thin, Dr. Kethmore. Places where something waits that should never be allowed to wake up. Places your expanding civilization has been building colonies dangerously close to. The command center around them hummed with activity as more humans awakened and took their stations. Outside, Sarah could see through the transparent walls that other ships were approaching. Ships like the Eternal Vigil, massive and impossible with the same flowing designs and glowing hulls. How many ships? She asked. Enough, Commander Chen replied. We knew this day would come. We have been preparing for 40,000 years. Now it is time to see if our preparations were sufficient. Dr. Vasquez touched a control, and a new display appeared in the air above them. It showed the galaxy, with thousands of red points scattered throughout. These are the danger zones, she explained. Places where the barriers between realities are weak. For 40,000 years we have been watching them, keeping them stable, but your civilization has expanded into 3 of them in the last century. And that is bad? Sarah asked. Commander Chen's expression grew grim. Captain, you have no idea. The conference room aboard the Eternal Vigil was unlike anything Captain Sarah Voss had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of living light, shifting and flowing with patterns that almost made sense. Representatives from the Galactic Council sat around a table that appeared to be carved from a single piece of crystal, facing the humans who had awakened from their 40,000-year sleep. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the head of the table, her hands resting on a device that projected images into the air above them. Commander James Chen sat beside her, his gray hair reflecting the strange light from the walls. Behind them, other humans worked quietly at stations that seemed to respond to their thoughts. Before we begin, Dr. Vasquez said, you need to understand what you are seeing. This ship, these people, this technology, none of it should exist according to your current understanding of physics. Ambassador Zexathara, who had arrived with the council delegation 6 hours earlier, leaned forward in her chair. What do you mean? 40,000 years ago we learned that the universe is not what it appears to be, Dr. Vasquez explained. Reality has layers. What you see, what you measure with your instruments, what you call the physical universe, is only the surface. Beneath it are deeper levels where thought becomes real, where will shapes matter, where the very concept of existence can be challenged. Dr. Kethmore raised one of his 4 hands. That sounds like philosophy, not science. Commander Chen spoke for the first time. Dr. Kethmore, what is the square root of -1? The Rillan scientist blinked in confusion. That is an imaginary number. It has no real value. Exactly, Chen said. But imaginary numbers are essential for understanding quantum mechanics, aren't they? Just because something is imaginary doesn't mean it isn't real in the ways that matter. Dr. Vasquez touched her device, and the air above the table filled with new images. They showed star charts, but not like any star charts the council representatives had seen. These charts had extra dimensions, layers upon layers of space that folded in on themselves. 43,000 years ago, humanity encountered something that existed in those deeper layers, she continued. Something that was old when our galaxy was young. Something that had been sleeping in the spaces between realities. What kind of something? Asked Representative Corv. Dr. Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was careful, as if the words themselves were dangerous. We never gave it a name, she said. Names have power in the deep layers. To name something is to give it more reality, but we can describe what it does. It unmakes things, not just destroys them. It makes them never have existed in the first place. The conference room fell silent. The concept was hard to even think about. How did you encounter it? Ambassador Zexthara asked. Commander Chen stood and walked to the wall, which immediately displayed new images at his approach. We were explorers then, pushing into regions of space that had never been mapped. One of our deep space missions found something impossible. A star system where the planets orbited in patterns that violated the laws of physics. When our scientists tried to study it, the entire research fleet simply stopped existing. Stopped existing? Representative Corv asked. Not destroyed, Dr. Vasquez clarified. Unmade. The ships, the crews, the records of their mission, even the memories of the people who had sent them. All of it just wasn't anymore. If we hadn't had automated backup systems that existed in deep storage, we would never have known they had ever existed at all. The images above the table changed again. Now they showed a map of human space as it had been 43,000 years ago. Hundreds of worlds, thousands of ships. A civilization that spanned half the galaxy. We tried to quarantine the area, Commander Chen continued. We set up warning beacons, established patrol routes to keep ships away. But the effect was spreading. Reality around the anomaly was becoming unstable. Stars began to flicker in and out of existence. Planets would be there one day and gone the next. With no record they had ever been there. So you fought it, said Security Chief Rhaegar. The Corvani warrior understood battles, even if he didn't understand the enemy. For 3,000 years, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. It was unlike any war ever fought. How do you battle something that exists in the spaces between thoughts? How do you destroy something that can make your weapons never have existed? New images appeared above the table. They showed human fleets unlike anything in the current galaxy's databases. Ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Weapons that fired concepts instead of energy. Shields that protected not just against physical attack, but against the very idea of attack. We learned to fight in the deep layers, Commander Chen explained. We developed technology that worked with thought and will instead of just matter and energy. We became something more than just a physical species. We learned to dream with purpose. Dream? Dr. Kethmore asked. In the deep layers, dreams are real, Dr. Vasquez said. Imagination has substance. Will can reshape reality. We trained our minds to work together, to dream the same dreams, to impose our vision of reality on spaces where reality was negotiable. The images showed battles that hurt to look at. Space twisted and folded. Time ran backward and forward at the same time, and human ships moved through dimensions that had no names. For 3,000 years we held the line, Commander Chen continued. We contained the entity, prevented it from spreading further, but we could not destroy it. Every time we thought we had won, it would adapt, find a new way to attack reality itself. So what did you do? Ambassador Zexthara asked. Dr. Vasquez sat down heavily in her chair. We made the hardest decision in human history. We realized that the entity fed on conflict, grew stronger with each battle. The only way to contain it was to stop fighting in the traditional sense. You surrendered? Representative Corv asked. No, Commander Chen said firmly. We evolved. We developed a new strategy. Instead of fighting the entity directly, we would contain it by becoming its eternal guards. We would sleep on the borders of reality. dreaming barriers into existence, maintaining the walls between what is and what should never be. The images above the table changed one final time. Now they showed the human fleet as it existed today. Hundreds of massive ships like the Eternal Vigil, each one containing thousands of sleeping humans. But these were not ordinary sleep chambers. We created the fleet of memory, Dr. Vasquez explained. Ships that exist partially outside normal spacetime. Each ship is crewed by volunteers who agreed to sleep for as long as necessary, dreaming the galaxy safe. For 40,000 years? Dr. Kethmore asked, amazed. 40,000 years, Commander Chen confirmed. Every human in those sleep chambers has been dreaming the same dream. A dream of strong walls, of barriers that cannot be crossed, of an entity contained in sleeping. Our dreams became reality in the deep layers, holding the darkness at bay. Ambassador Zexathara leaned back in her chair. But why reveal yourselves now? Why wake up after so long? Dr. Vasquez's expression grew grim. Because your civilization has grown beyond the safe boundaries. Your expansion has taken you too close to the weak spots in reality. 3 of your colonies are now built directly on top of barrier points we have been maintaining for millennia. She touched her device, and a new star map appeared. This one showed current galactic civilization, with trade routes and colony worlds marked in blue. But there were also red zones scattered throughout, and several blue dots were very close to red ones. The colony on Zerion 7, she continued. The mining station at Kepler's Gate. The research facility at Far Reach. All of them are built on places where reality is thin, where our dreaming guardians have been working to keep the barriers strong. Are you saying our colonies are in danger? Representative Korv asked. Worse, Commander Chen replied. Your colonies are weakening the barriers. Every ship that docks at those stations, every mining operation that digs deep into those worlds, every research project that probes into areas you don't understand. All of it is straining the walls we have spent 40,000 years building. Dr. Kethmore's fur was standing straight up again. What happens if the barriers fail? The entity wakes up, Dr. Vasquez said simply. And this time there is a lot more galaxy for it to unmake. The conference room was silent as everyone absorbed the implications. The peaceful expansion that had defined galactic civilization for thousands of years had brought them to the edge of something unthinkable. What do you want us to do? Ambassador Zexathara asked finally. Help us, Dr. Vasquez replied. For 40,000 years we have been fighting alone. But we always knew this day would come. The entity is stirring again, responding to the changes your civilization has brought to the galaxy. Our fleet alone may not be enough this time. How can we help? Representative Korv asked. You said yourselves that this enemy exists in places our technology cannot reach. Commander Chen stood again. Your technology cannot reach those places, but your minds can. We can teach some of your people to dream fight, to join us in the deep layers. Not many, but enough to strengthen our barriers to give us the extra power we need to keep the entity contained. And if we refuse? Security Chief Rhaegar asked. Dr. Vasquez looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. Then you will face the entity alone when it finally breaks free. And I promise you, Chief Rhaegar, your weapons will be useless against something that can make the very concept of weapons cease to exist. The silence stretched on as the council representatives thought about what they had learned. Finally, Ambassador Zexathara spoke. If we agree to help, what exactly are you asking us to do? First, evacuate the 3 critical colonies immediately, Dr. Vasquez said. Those barriers are already weakening. We need to remove all unnecessary strain. Second, Commander Chen added, provide volunteers for dream fight training. People with strong wills and stable minds. The training is dangerous and not everyone can survive learning to fight in the deep layers. And third, Dr. Vasquez concluded, prepare your fleets for a war unlike any ever fought. If our barriers fail, if the entity breaks free, you will need every ship, every weapon, every person willing to stand between reality and oblivion. Ambassador Zexathara looked around the table at her fellow representatives. One by one they nodded. We will take your proposal to the full council, she said. But Ambassador, I think I can speak for all of us when I say that we will help however we can. Dr. Vasquez smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Thank you. But remember, Ambassador, time is not on our side. Even now our sensors are detecting fluctuations in the barrier zones. The entity knows something has changed. It is beginning to test our defenses. As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Commander Chen immediately moved to one of the wall stations, which lit up at his touch. "What is it?" Dr. Vasquez asked. Chen's face was grim. "Breach in Sector 7. The barrier around the Zarian system is failing." Dr. Vasquez turned to the council representatives. "It looks like the war has already begun." Admiral Sarah Cross had been dreaming of war for 40,000 years. Now standing on the bridge of the eternal vigil as reality itself came under attack, she finally understood why those dreams had been necessary. "Report," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. Officers worked frantically at stations that glowed with impossible light, monitoring threats that existed in dimensions most people couldn't even imagine. "Barrier breach confirmed in the Zarian system," reported Lieutenant Torres from the tactical station. "The mining operations there have created fractures in local space-time. The entity is using those fractures to push through." Admiral Cross turned to Captain Sarah Voss, who stood nearby with the other council representatives. The Galactic Council had agreed to help, but she could see the fear in their eyes. They were about to witness something their civilizations had no words for. "Captain, I need you to contact your fleet immediately," Cross said. "Tell them to stay away from the Zarian system. Do not approach, do not investigate, do not try to help. Any ship that enters that area will only make things worse." "Worse how?" Captain Voss asked. Before Cross could answer, the main display showed them. The Zarian system appeared on screen, but it looked wrong. The star flickered between different colors, sometimes blue, sometimes red, sometimes colors that hurt to look at. The planets orbited in patterns that violated physics, moving in loops and spirals that should have torn them apart. "The entity doesn't just destroy things," Dr. Elena Vasquez explained as she joined them on the bridge. "It changes the rules. In areas under its influence, physics becomes unreliable, cause and effect breakdown. Time flows in circles. Consciousness becomes negotiable." "What do you mean, negotiable?" asked Dr. Kethmore. "Watch," Admiral Cross said grimly. The display zoomed in on one of Zarion's planets. A mining colony was visible on the surface, but as they watched, the buildings began to change. Some grew taller, stretching impossibly into the sky. Others melted like wax, flowing across the landscape in rivers of metal and stone, and some simply blinked out of existence as if they had never been built at all. "The colonists," Captain Voss whispered. "Are they?" "Some are dead," Dr. Vasquez said quietly. "Some are alive but changed into things that were never meant to exist. And some are caught in temporal loops, living the same moments over and over again without realizing it." The display showed figures moving on the planet's surface, but they moved wrong. Some walked backward while thinking they were going forward. Others moved through solid walls as if they were air. A few seemed to be in multiple places at once, their forms scattered across space like broken reflections. "This is what happens when reality breaks down," Admiral Cross explained. "The entity doesn't follow our rules because it comes from a place where there are no rules. When it enters our space, it brings that chaos with it." "How do we fight something like that?" asked Representative Korv, who had joined the council delegation on the human ship. Admiral Cross smiled grimly. "Very carefully, and with weapons your people have never seen." She gestured, and the bridge around them began to change. The walls became transparent, showing the space outside. But it wasn't normal space. They could see other dimensions layered on top of each other like sheets of glass. In some layers, the stars were different colors. In others, they moved in patterns that spelled out words in languages that didn't exist. "This is how we see the universe now," Dr. Vasquez explained, "in all its layers at once. The entity exists primarily in the deeper layers, where thought and reality blend together. To fight it, we have to go there too." Other ships were becoming visible in the layered space around them. Ships like the Eternal Vigil, massive and impossible, their hulls flowing with patterns of light. But these weren't just moving through normal space. They were traveling through the layers of reality itself, sliding between dimensions like fish through water. The dream of Terra, the memory of Mars, the song of distant Earth. Admiral Cross named them as they appeared. Each ship is a fortress in the deep layers, crewed by people who have learned to fight with their minds instead of just their weapons. "How many ships do you have?" Captain Voss asked. 373, Cross replied, each one containing between 50 and 100,000 sleeping guardians. For 40,000 years they have been dreaming barriers into existence, holding the darkness at bay. The tactical display changed, showing the approaching human fleet in formation around the breached barrier. But this wasn't a normal military formation. The ships moved in spirals and circles, creating patterns that seemed to have meaning beyond mere strategy. Each ship's position creates a mandala of protection, Dr. Vasquez explained. The geometry itself has power in the deep layers. Our formation is both a battle array and a prayer made manifest. A prayer to what? Asked Dr. Kethmore. To the idea that reality should remain stable, Admiral Cross said. To the concept that existence is better than non-existence. To the hope that consciousness can triumph over chaos. Alarms sounded again, and the display shifted to show new breaches opening throughout the galaxy. Not just at Xerion, but at the other colony sites the humans had warned about. The entity was pushing through in multiple places at once. It's learning, Admiral Cross said grimly. For 40,000 years it has been testing our barriers, finding weak points. Now it's using everything it has learned to attack simultaneously. The images from the breach sites were horrifying. At Kepler's Gate mining station, the asteroids had begun to move in impossible ways, forming shapes that spelled out concepts too dangerous to think about. Ships that tried to evacuate found their engines working backward, pushing them toward the danger instead of away from it. At the Far Reach Research Facility, the scientists had been studying dark matter when reality around them simply stopped making sense. Some of them were now existing in multiple time streams at once, aging and growing younger simultaneously. Others had become living equations. Their bodies transformed into mathematical formulas that walked around the station. This is what your expansion into forbidden space has caused, Admiral Cross said to the Council representatives. By building in areas where reality is thin, you've given the entity footholds in our dimension. We didn't know, Captain Voss said desperately. If you had warned us, we tried, Dr. Vasquez interrupted. The warnings were carved into every human ruin your people found. They are sleeping. Do not wake them. But you thought it was primitive superstition. Because it sounded like superstition, Representative Korv protested. Warnings about sleeping gods and ancient evils? No rational species would take such things seriously. Admiral Cross turned to face him directly. Representative, what is the most rational response to a threat that exists beyond reason? How do you prepare for something that can make the very concept of preparation meaningless? Before Korv could answer, new alarms sounded. This time the threat was closer to home. Admiral, Lieutenant Torres called from his station. Massive distortion forming at the edge of the system. Something is coming through. The main display showed empty space, but as they watched, reality began to bend and twist. Stars in the background seemed to stretch like taffy, and space itself developed cracks that leaked impossible colors. All ships, battle stations, Admiral Cross commanded. Prepare for deep layer engagement. Around them, the human fleet began to change. The ship's hulls became translucent, showing the sleeping chambers within. But now the chambers were glowing brighter, and patterns of light were flowing between them like neural pathways. The sleeping guardians are linking their dreams, Dr. Vasquez explained to the watching council representatives. Together, they will create a barrier of pure will around this system. What can we do to help? Captain Voss asked. Stay back and observe, Admiral Cross replied. This first battle will tell us how much the entity has grown in power. If our current forces are not enough, we will need to wake more guardians and train your people faster than we had hoped. The distortion in space grew larger, and something began to emerge from it. It wasn't a ship or a creature in any sense that made sense. It was a concept given form, an idea that had learned to hate existence. It looked like a hole in reality shaped like a thought, surrounded by fragments of things that had never been allowed to exist. All ships engage, Admiral Cross commanded. The human fleet opened fire, but their weapons were unlike anything the Council representatives had ever seen. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, they fired pure concepts. Hope given destructive form, the memory of sunlight weaponized against darkness, dreams of safety made manifest as shields. The entity responded with attacks of its own. Waves of non-existence washed over the human ships, trying to convince them they had never been built. Concepts of despair and meaninglessness hammered against their defenses, but the human ships held. The sleeping guardians' dreams formed layers of protection that the entity couldn't penetrate. Every attack was met with a counter-dream. Every assault on reality answered with a stronger affirmation of existence. It's working, Dr. Vasquez said with relief. The barriers are holding, but Admiral Cross wasn't smiling. "This is just a probe," she said. "The entity is testing our current strength. The real attack will come when it knows what we're capable of." As if responding to her words, the entity suddenly withdrew. The distortion in space collapsed, and the impossible presence vanished back into the deeper layers of reality. "Is it over?" Captain Voss asked. "No," Admiral Cross replied. "It's just beginning. The entity now knows we're awake again, and it knows how strong our current defenses are. It will gather its forces and return with everything it has." She turned to face the council representatives directly. "Captain, you need to return to your people immediately. Tell them what you've seen here. The galaxy has perhaps days before the entity launches its full assault. We need every ship, every weapon, and every mind willing to join the fight." "What about the other breach sites?" Representative Korv asked. "We'll contain them as best we can," Dr. Vasquez said. "But our fleet is stretched thin. If the entity attacks all the breach points simultaneously while also hitting us here, we may not be able to hold all the barriers." Admiral Cross walked to the transparent wall of the bridge, looking out at the layered dimensions of space. In the deeper layers, she could see movement. Vast shapes stirring in the darkness between realities, preparing for war. "For 40,000 years we've been the galaxy's guardians in secret," she said quietly. "We've fought battles in places where thought becomes real, holding back horrors that would unmake existence itself. But now the secret war is about to become very public." She turned back to the council representatives. "Go to your people. Tell them that the age of innocence is over. The galaxy is about to learn that there are some frontiers that should never be crossed, some boundaries that exist for very good reasons." As the council delegation prepared to leave for their ship, Dr. Vasquez caught Captain Voss's arm. "Captain," she said quietly, "when you report to the council, make sure they understand one thing. This isn't a war we can win through conventional means. If we're going to survive what's coming, your people will need to learn to fight with more than just weapons. They'll need to learn to fight with their very souls." Outside, in the depths of space where reality grew thin, something ancient and hungry was gathering its strength for the final assault on existence itself. The emergency session of the Galactic Council lasted 3 days. Representatives from every member world argued, debated, and finally accepted the impossible truth. Their galaxy was under attack by something that existed beyond their understanding, and their only hope lay with a species that had supposedly vanished 40,000 years ago. Captain Sarah Voss stood before the assembled delegates in the Great Hall, showing them recordings from the human ships, images of reality breaking down, of space itself becoming unreliable, of an enemy that could make existence itself negotiable. "The evacuation of all 3 colonies is already underway," she reported. "But Admiral Cross warns that this may only buy us time. The entity has been growing stronger for millennia, and now it knows we are aware of it." Ambassador Zexthara rose from her floating chair. "Have any other species volunteered for this dream-fighting training?" "Surprisingly, yes," Captain Voss replied. "The Tashari have offered 50 volunteers. The Aquari delegation has provided 23. Even the Corvani, despite their preference for conventional warfare, have sent 12 of their warriors." Representative Korv nodded approvingly. "My people understand that some battles require weapons of the spirit as much as weapons of steel. Where will this training take place?" asked Representative Mira. "Aboard the human ships," Captain Voss explained. "The fleet of memory exists partially outside normal spacetime. The volunteers will need to learn to function in environments where thought becomes reality. Werewolf can reshape matter." What she didn't tell them was how dangerous the training was. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been honest about the risks. Not everyone who attempted to learn dream fighting survived the process. The human mind had evolved over 40,000 years to handle the deep layers of reality. Other species were less adaptable, but they had no choice. The entity's attacks were growing stronger and more frequent. Just that morning, they had received reports of reality distortions in 12 different star systems. Space stations were reporting that their corridors led to rooms that didn't exist. Cargo ships were arriving at destinations they had never visited. And on 3 different worlds, people were aging backward or forward at random rates. "There is something else," Captain Voss continued. "Admiral Cross has requested that all member fleets be placed under unified command. She says that conventional tactics will not work against this enemy." "Unified under whose command?" asked Representative Thane. "Hers," Captain Voss replied. "She has 40,000 years of experience fighting this enemy. She knows its tactics, its capabilities, its weaknesses. The debate that followed was intense but brief. In the end, faced with an enemy that could unmake existence itself, the Council voted to grant Admiral Cross emergency authority over all galactic defense forces. 2 days later, Captain Voss found herself back aboard the Eternal Vigil, watching as volunteers from across the galaxy learned to fight with their minds instead of their weapons. The training took place in chambers that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Volunteers lay in crystal pods similar to those used by the sleeping Guardians, but these pods were designed for conscious minds rather than dreaming ones. Dr. Vasquez moved between the pods, monitoring each volunteer's progress. The key is to understand that in the deep layers, intention shapes reality, she explained to Captain Voss as they watched. A weapon is only as real as the person wielding it believes it to be. A shield only protects if the defender truly understands what protection means. How do you teach someone to believe differently about reality? Captain Voss asked. Very carefully, Dr. Vasquez replied. And not everyone can learn. Watch. She indicated one of the pods where a young Tashari officer was training. In the pod's display, they could see what the volunteer was experiencing. He stood in a space that looked like the interior of a ship, but the walls were made of crystallized starlight and the floor was a sea of liquid mathematics. Lieutenant Keksavar is learning to navigate conceptual space, Dr. Vasquez explained. In the deep layers, you don't move by walking. You move by understanding where you want to be and why you deserve to be there. As they watched, the Tashari officer began to glow with soft light. He was learning to make his own existence more real, more solid, more undeniable. He's a natural, Dr. Vasquez said with approval. Some people have minds that adapt quickly to non-linear reality. Others... She gestured to another pod where a Corvani warrior was struggling. In his display, he kept trying to fight conceptual enemies with imaginary swords, and kept failing because he couldn't accept that swords were just another form of focused will. How long does the training take? Captain Voss asked. For basic competency? 2 weeks. For true effectiveness? Years. But we don't have years. Alarms suddenly echoed through the training chamber. Dr. Vasquez immediately moved to a wall station, which lit up at her touch. What is it? Captain Voss asked. Major breach forming at the galactic core, Dr. Vasquez replied grimly. All the smaller attacks were just diversions. The entity is making its real move. They hurried to the bridge where Admiral Cross was coordinating the response. The main display showed the galaxy from a perspective that included all the layers of reality. At the very center, where the massive black hole anchored their spiral of stars, something impossible was taking shape. The entity is using the gravitational anomaly of the galactic core to tear a permanent rift between dimensions, Admiral Cross explained as they joined her. If it succeeds, it won't need to break through barriers anymore. It will have a permanent gateway into our reality. How long do we have? Captain Voss asked. 6 hours, Cross replied. Maybe less. The human fleet was already moving, sliding through layers of space-time toward the galactic center. But this time they weren't alone. Ships from every member species of the Galactic Council flew alongside them, their crews preparing for a battle unlike any ever fought. Admiral, called Commander Chen from the tactical station. We're receiving reports from the volunteer trainees. 43 individuals have achieved basic dream fighting capability. Not enough, Cross said grimly, but it will have to do. As they approached the galactic core, the true scale of the threat became clear. The entity wasn't just breaking through reality, it was rewriting it. Space around the central black hole had become a maze of impossible geometry, where straight lines curved back on themselves and time flowed in spirals. All ships assume mandala formation, Admiral Cross commanded. Conventional vessels to the outer rings, dream fighters to the inner circles. The combined fleet arranged itself in a vast pattern around the galactic core. Human ships formed the center, their hulls glowing with the dreams of their sleeping guardians. Around them, council ships took defensive positions, their crews preparing to provide support they didn't fully understand. Admiral, Dr. Vasquez called from her station. The entity is emerging. What came through the rift defied description. It was larger than planets but had no fixed size. It was darker than space but glowed with anti-light. It was shaped like hunger given form, like the concept of ending made manifest. All dream fighters engage, Admiral Cross commanded. The battle that followed took place in dimensions that had no names. In normal space, the human ships appeared to simply hover motionless while strange lights played along their hulls. But in the deep layers, an epic struggle was unfolding. Dr. Elena Vasquez, connected to the ship's dream fighting systems, found herself standing on a battlefield made of crystallized time. Around her, the volunteers she had trained fought alongside sleeping guardians who had been dreaming of this moment for 40,000 years. The entity's attacks came as waves of pure negation. Concepts like never was and should not be hammered against their defenses. But the combined fleet responded with something the entity had never faced before. "We are," Vasquez declared, her voice echoing across impossible distances. Around her, thousands of voices joined in. Human, Tashari, Aquari, Corvani, Veltani. Every species in the galaxy speaking as one. "We exist," they continued. "We matter. We choose to be," the entity faltered. For 40,000 years, it had faced only human will. Now it confronted the combined determination of an entire galaxy. Dozens of different perspectives on reality. Dozens of different ways of understanding existence. All unified in their refusal to be unmade. But the entity was ancient and powerful. It began to adapt, finding new ways to attack their unified defense. It whispered doubts into their minds, suggesting that existence was painful, that non-being was peaceful, that surrender was easier than struggle. Some of the volunteers began to weaken. The Corvani warrior, who had struggled with training, suddenly found his sword becoming real, as he finally understood that determination was just another form of focused will. A young Aquari navigator discovered that her ability to find paths through water translated perfectly to finding paths through conceptual space. But it wasn't enough. The entity was too strong, too ancient, too hungry for oblivion. Then Dr. Elena Vasquez made a decision that would echo through galactic history. She dove deeper into the dream fight than anyone had ever gone before, pushing her consciousness directly into the entity's core concept of negation. "I remember," she said, her voice carrying across all layers of reality. "I remember 40,000 years of vigilance. I remember every moment we spent protecting this galaxy. I remember why existence matters." Her memories became weapons. 40,000 years of human dreams, of hopes for the future, of love for life itself. The memories of every species that had ever looked at the stars and wondered what was out there. The simple, undeniable fact that consciousness had chosen to exist, despite all the reasons it might choose not to. The entity screamed across dimensions as Vasquez's memories tore through its core concepts. How could something that sought to unmake existence deal with proof that existence was worth preserving? How could it negate something that had already proven its right to be? But the effort was too much. As the entity retreated, wounded and confused, Dr. Vasquez felt her own existence beginning to fade. She had given too much of herself to the memory weapon. "Elena," Admiral Cross's voice reached her across the dream space. "It's okay," Vasquez replied, her form already becoming translucent. "I understand now. This is what we were always meant to do. Not just guard the galaxy, but prove that it's worth guarding." As her consciousness dissolved into the deep layers of reality, her final thought became a truth that anchored itself in the very structure of space-time. We endure. The entity, faced with this paradox, this absolute proof that existence could outlast any attempt to negate it, fled beyond the galactic rim. It wasn't destroyed, but it was contained, held at bay by the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy people would always be ready to stand between existence and void. The battle was over. The immediate threat had passed. But the galaxy would never be the same. In the weeks that followed, the Department of Conceptual Security was established with Dr. Vasquez's sacrifice as its founding principle. Volunteers from every species learned to dream fight, taking their place alongside the sleeping guardians of the fleet of memory. The human ships resumed their eternal patrol, but now they carried crews from across the galaxy. The ghost ships that walked between stars were no longer alone in their vigil. Captain Sarah Voss, now bearing the title of Conceptual Security Coordinator, established new protocols for galactic expansion. Some frontiers would remain forbidden, some boundaries would never be crossed, and some dark spaces between the stars would always have watchers. The final entry in the Eternal Vigil's log was written by Lieutenant Kexvar, the young Tashari officer who had proven so gifted at dreamfighting. "Today I finally understood what Admiral Cross meant when she said this wasn't a war we could win with weapons. This was a war for the right to exist, and the only way to win such a war is to prove that existence is worth defending. Dr. Vasquez showed us how to do that. She showed us that memory is the strongest weapon, Hope is the best shield, and the willingness to stand guard is the highest form of courage. The galaxy owes her a debt we can never repay, but we can honor her sacrifice by never forgetting why existence matters. We endure, we choose to be, and we will always stand watch in the dark places between realities, keeping the light burning for those who sleep peacefully among the stars. And in the deep dark between galaxies, ancient barriers held firm, watched over by ships that existed in the spaces between thoughts, crewed by beings who had learned that the greatest victory was not conquest, but the simple, stubborn refusal to let the light go out.
The deep silence of space was broken by the soft beeping of sensors aboard the Alliance survey ship Starseeker. Captain James Reed looked up from his data pad, his eyes focusing on the main view screen. It was supposed to be a normal day of border patrol in the Outer Rim, but something felt different. "Captain, I'm picking up an unusual reading," said Tom Parker, the sensor operator. His fingers moved quickly across the control panel as he tried to make sense of the data. "It's big, really big." Reed walked over to the sensor station, his boots making soft sounds against the metal floor. The Starseeker was a small ship, just perfect for patrol duties, but what they were seeing on the sensors made their vessel feel tiny. "Can you clear up that image?" Reed asked, pointing at the blurry shape on the screen. The shape was massive, far larger than any normal ship should be. "Working on it, sir," Tom replied, adjusting the sensors. "Whatever it is, it's about twice the size of a standard Alliance battleship." The bridge crew fell silent as the image slowly became clearer. What they saw made them all stare in disbelief. It was definitely a warship, but unlike anything they had ever seen before. Its dark hull seemed to both reflect and absorb light in impossible ways. The design was elegant yet threatening, with smooth lines that shouldn't have been possible in spacecraft construction. "Sir," called out Linda Morris from the science station, "the energy readings from that ship, they don't make any sense. According to these measurements, it's somehow using less energy than a cargo shuttle while maintaining systems that should require the power of a small sun." Reed scratched his head, trying to understand what they were seeing. In his 20 years of space service, he had never encountered anything like this. "Any identification markings?" he asked. The next discovery hit them even harder. "Sir, you're not going to believe this," Tom said, his voice shaking slightly. "The markings are in English. It's a human ship." This revelation sent a wave of confusion through the bridge. Humans were considered a minor race in the Alliance, barely 50 years into their membership. They weren't supposed to have technology like this. The most advanced human ships were basic cruisers, nothing more than modified Alliance designs. "Open a communication channel," Reed ordered. He straightened his uniform, aware that this moment could be historically significant. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain James Reed of the Alliance survey ship Starseeker. Please identify yourself." They waited, but no response came. The massive ship just floated there, silent and mysterious. "Try all frequencies," Reed commanded. "Add first contact protocols to the message." Linda's console suddenly lit up with warnings. "Captain, the ship's hull, its reading is both solid and non-existent at the same time. That's not possible. And these energy patterns, they're like nothing in our database." Reed made a decision. "Send a priority message to Alliance Command. Mark it urgent. Include all sensor data." He turned to his navigation officer, "John, keep us at a safe distance, but maintain visual contact." As John adjusted their position, Reed studied the mysterious vessel more carefully. Its design was both beautiful and terrifying. The hull was smooth, without the usual external equipment that all ships needed. No visible weapon ports, no sensor arrays, not even standard navigation lights. Yet somehow it was clearly a warship. Its very shape spoke of power and purpose. "Message sent, sir," Tom reported. "But there's something else. The space around the ship, it's different. Like it's bending reality itself." Reed nodded slowly. "Record everything. Every detail matters." He had a feeling that this discovery would change everything they thought they knew about space travel and ship design. Hours passed as they watched and waited. The bridge crew took turns taking breaks, but Reed stayed at his post. He couldn't take his eyes off the impossible ship. Every now and then, the vessel seemed to flicker, as if it was trying to exist in multiple places at once. Finally, after what seemed like forever, their communication system came to life. Starseeker, this is Alliance Command. Hold your position. A research team is being dispatched to your location. Do not approach the unknown vessel. Repeat, do not approach. The response was faster than Reed expected. Usually, Alliance Command took days to react to anything. This immediate response told him that they understood the significance of what his crew had found. Look at that, Linda suddenly called out. She pointed to her screen, showing new sensor data. The metal of the hull. It's not just unknown, it's changing its molecular structure every few seconds. But the changes follow a pattern, like it's breathing. Reed walked over to look at her readings. The numbers and patterns made his head hurt. According to everything they knew about physics and engineering, this ship couldn't exist. But it did, and it was floating right in front of them. Sir, John called from his station, I've been calculating the ship's size. Based on our scans, it's about 3 kilometers long. But here's the strange part, its mass readings keep changing. Sometimes it reads as heavy as a small moon. Other times, it's almost weightless. The mysteries kept piling up. Reed ordered his crew to start a detailed log of everything they observed. He had a feeling that every piece of information would be important for understanding this impossible vessel. As they waited for the research team to arrive, Reed couldn't help but feel proud. Somewhere, somehow, humans had built this ship. Even if it came from some unknown human civilization, it proved that humanity's potential was far greater than anyone in the Alliance had imagined. The next few hours were filled with careful observation and data collection. They noticed that the ship seemed to have its own effect on local space. Small objects like dust and debris moved around it in patterns that defied normal gravitational laws. Sometimes, the stars behind it appeared to shift position slightly, as if the ship was bending light itself. When the research vessel finally arrived, Reed had filled several data pads with observations and questions. As he prepared to transfer command of the situation to the research team, he took one last look at the mysterious warship. Its dark hull still played tricks with the light, and its impossible design still challenged everything he knew about physics. Reed knew that this discovery would change the galaxy's view of humanity forever. This ship, whatever it was, wherever it came from, was proof that humans could achieve things that the most advanced races thought impossible. As he prepared his final report, he couldn't help but smile. The galaxy was about to learn that they had seriously underestimated humanity's capabilities. The research ship, Knowledge Seeker, arrived with Dr. Marcus Walker aboard. He was the best human scientist in the Alliance, known for his work in theoretical spacecraft design. As he stepped onto the Star Seeker's bridge, his eyes went straight to the main screen showing the mysterious warship. Incredible, he whispered, pulling out his datapad. Simply incredible. His fingers moved quickly across the screen as he started taking notes. Captain Reed, I need to see all your sensor data immediately. Reed nodded to Linda, who transferred all their readings to Walker's pad. The scientist's eyes grew wider as he looked through the information. This shouldn't be possible, he said, but his voice was filled with excitement rather than doubt. We need to get closer, Walker announced. My team brought special scanning equipment. We might be able to learn more about its construction. Captain Reed looked uncertain. Is that safe? The space around that ship seems strange. Nothing about this ship is safe, Walker replied with a small smile. But that's exactly why we need to study it. This vessel breaks nearly every rule of physics we know. Understanding it could change everything. With careful movements, the Star Seeker moved closer to the mysterious warship. Walker's team set up their equipment, filling the bridge with new screens and sensors. The closer they got, the stranger things became. Look at this, Walker called out, pointing to one of his screens. The hull metal. It's not just unknown, it's impossible. The atomic structure keeps shifting, but it maintains perfect stability. It's like it's made of solid quantum particles. One of Walker's assistants spoke up. "Doctor, we're picking up some kind of field around the ship. It's like it's partially phased into another reality." Walker rushed to check the readings himself. "Of course," he exclaimed. "That's how it manages to exist. The ship isn't fully in our reality. It's somehow existing in multiple states at once, like a quantum particle that hasn't been observed." The scientists worked for hours, taking readings and making theories. Captain Reed and his crew helped where they could, but most of the scientific talk went over their heads. Still, they could tell that whatever they had found was revolutionary. "Sir," Tom called out suddenly, "something's happening. The ship, it's becoming more solid, more real." Everyone turned to watch as the mysterious warship seemed to shift. Its outline became clearer, more defined. The strange effects around it grew stronger. "Quick, scan everything," Walker ordered his team. "This might be our chance to learn more about its true nature." As the ship became more solid, new details became visible. The hull had markings that hadn't been clear before. Walker read them out loud. "HMS Paradox. That's its name. But HMS, that's an old Earth Navy designation. How is that possible?" The mystery deepened when they discovered a small opening appearing in the ship's hull. It looked like an airlock, but its design was unlike anything they had seen before. "We need to go in," Walker said firmly. "This might be our only chance to learn the truth about this ship." Captain Reed shook his head. "Alliance Command ordered us not to board it." "Sometimes," Walker replied, "science requires taking risks. This ship, it's not just a mystery, Captain. It's proof that humans can achieve things that the Alliance thinks are impossible. We need to know how." After much discussion, they agreed to send a small team. Walker would lead it, along with 2 of his scientists and 2 of Reed's security officers. They prepared carefully, checking their space suits 3 times before approaching the mysterious ship. As they got closer to the Paradox in their small shuttle, the strange effects became stronger. Their instruments started showing impossible readings. Time itself seemed to move differently near the ship's hull. "The airlock," one of the security officers said. "It's like it's inviting us in." "The design, it's meant for human use." Walker nodded as they carefully docked with the strange ship. "This ship was made by humans, even if we don't understand how or when. Everything about it feels familiar, just advanced beyond anything we can imagine." The airlock opened smoothly, as if it had been waiting for them. Inside, they found corridors that seemed to bend in impossible ways. The walls had a subtle glow that provided perfect lighting without any visible sources. "The air is breathable," Walker announced, checking his instruments. "The life support systems are still working, but these readings suggest they're not using any power. That's impossible." They moved deeper into the ship, finding more impossible things with each step. Rooms that were bigger on the inside than they should be. Control panels that responded to thought rather than touch. Technology that made the most advanced Alliance equipment look primitive. In what seemed to be the ship's main computer room, Walker found something that made him gasp. These data crystals, they're storing more information than should be possible in this universe. As they carefully connected their equipment to the ship's systems, information began flowing. The security officers kept watch while the scientists worked, trying to understand the flood of data. "This is incredible," Walker said, his voice full of awe. "According to these logs, this ship, it's from another timeline. A reality where humanity became the dominant force in the galaxy. They developed technology that our scientists think is impossible." The team spent hours downloading and studying the information. They learned that the Paradox was more than just a warship. It was a testament to human potential. In its reality, humanity had unlocked secrets of the universe that the Alliance races hadn't even dreamed of. But as they worked, something strange began to happen. The ship started to become less solid again, as if it was trying to shift back to its previous state. "We need to leave," Walker said reluctantly. "The ship is shifting between realities again. If we stay, we might get trapped here." They quickly gathered their equipment and data, making their way back to the airlock. As they returned to their shuttle, they could see the paradox starting to fade, becoming ghost-like again. Back on the Starseeker, Walker and his team began studying the information they had gathered. "This is just the beginning," he told Captain Reed. "What we found today, it's going to change everything. This ship is proof that humanity's potential is far greater than anyone imagined." Reed looked at the mysterious warship on his screen, watching as it continued to flicker between states of reality. He couldn't help but feel proud. Somewhere out there, in another timeline, humans had built something that defied the very laws of physics. Maybe, with what they had learned today, they could start working toward that same potential in their own reality. The next few days aboard the Starseeker were filled with constant work as Dr. Walker and his team studied the data they had gathered from the HMS Paradox. Every new piece of information they decoded left them more amazed than the last. Walker sat in the ship's meeting room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the information they had recovered. Captain Reed and his senior crew watched as the scientist explained their latest findings. "The truth is more incredible than we imagined," Walker said, pulling up a complex diagram. "The paradox isn't just from another timeline. It's from a reality where humanity took a completely different path. In that world, we didn't join the Alliance. Instead, we developed our own technology, our own path to the stars." He touched another control, and a new image appeared. It showed Earth, but not like they knew it. This Earth was surrounded by massive space stations and shipyards that made their most advanced facilities look like children's toys. In that reality, humanity faced a terrible threat. Walker continued. Something was destroying entire galaxies, eating stars, ending whole civilizations. The other humanity built the paradox as part of their last hope to stop it. Linda raised her hand. "But how did it end up here, in our reality?" Walker's face grew serious. "That's the most amazing part. They didn't just build a warship, they built something that could travel between realities. The paradox was designed to find other versions of humanity and help them." He brought up more data, showing complex equations that seemed to bend and twist on the screen. The ship's main computer contains detailed records of how they developed their technology. Everything from basic engine designs to weapons that could damage space itself. But it's not just technical data, it's also warnings. "Warnings about what?" Reed asked, leaning forward in his chair. "About the responsibility that comes with such power," Walker replied. The other humanity learned hard lessons about advanced technology. They made mistakes, faced consequences. They wanted to make sure that if other versions of humanity found this ship, they would learn from those mistakes. Tom spoke up from his position near the door. "But why make it so strange? Why does it keep shifting between realities?" "Because it had to," Walker explained. "The ship exists in multiple realities at once. It's how it survived the journey between timelines. But that same feature is now causing problems. The paradox is trying to stabilize itself in our reality, but the process is causing strain on the fabric of space itself." Reed's face showed concern. "Is it dangerous?" "Yes and no," Walker said. "The ship's systems are designed to prevent catastrophic failure, but its presence here is causing changes in local spacetime. Small changes now, but they're growing." The scientist pulled up another display, this one showing the space around the paradox. Strange patterns of energy moved through the void, like ripples in a pond. "We need to make a decision," Walker continued. "The ship's data cores contain technology that could advance humanity by centuries. Designs for engines that don't need fuel, weapons that could destroy stars, shields that could protect entire planets. But using this knowledge, it would change everything. The balance of power in the Alliance, the very nature of space travel itself." The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Their humanity had always been seen as a minor race, barely worth noticing in galactic politics. With the technology from the paradox, they could become one of the most powerful species in known space. "There's more," Walker added, his voice getting quieter. "The ship's records show why they sent it across realities. The threat they faced, the one that was destroying galaxies, it exists in all realities. It's just that in some timelines, it hasn't arrived yet." That revelation hit everyone hard. The idea that some cosmic horror was out there, slowly making its way toward their galaxy, made the decision about the paradox even more important. "The other humanity didn't just send us technology," Walker explained. "They sent us a warning and a chance to prepare. They had to face this threat alone, but they wanted to make sure other versions of humanity wouldn't have to." Reed stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the mysterious warship. "So what do we do? If we report everything we found, the Alliance will want to take control of the ship and its technology." "Maybe that's not our decision to make," Linda suggested. "The ship was sent to help humanity, not the Alliance." Walker nodded slowly. "The ship's systems are coded to human DNA. Its most advanced technology can only be accessed by human minds. The other humanity made sure their gift would reach the right hands." As they discussed what to do, alarms suddenly started blaring throughout the Starseeker. Tom rushed to check the sensors. "The paradox," he shouted. "It's becoming more solid again. But this time, something's different. The energy patterns are changing." They all rushed to the bridge, watching as the mysterious warship seemed to pulse with internal light. Streams of energy flowed across its hull, and for the first time, they could see it clearly without any of the strange shifting effects. "It's stabilizing," Walker said, checking his instruments. "The ship is choosing to fully enter our reality, but that shouldn't be possible. The strain on space-time should be too great." Reed ordered everyone to battle stations, not sure what was about to happen. But as they watched, the paradox's hull began to glow with a soft blue light. Patterns of energy spread out from the ship, touching the fabric of space itself. "It's not just stabilizing," Walker said in awe. "It's repairing the damage its presence caused. The ship isn't just advanced technology. It's a key to understanding how reality itself works." As the light show continued, data began streaming into their computers. The paradox was sending them more information, but this time it was different. These weren't just technical specs or historical records. This was a message, a direct communication from the other humanity to their counterparts in this reality. "They're not just giving us their technology," Walker said as he read the incoming data. "They're giving us their legacy, everything they learned, everything they achieved, all their hopes for humanity's future. They want us to succeed where they failed, to be ready for what's coming." The bridge crew watched in silence as the paradox completed its transformation, finally becoming a permanent part of their reality. The impossible warship had chosen to stay, bringing with it knowledge that would change humanity's path forever. News of the paradox spread through the Alliance like wildfire. Within days, ships from every major race began arriving in the sector. They kept their distance, held back by Alliance peacekeeping vessels, but their presence made everyone aboard the Starseeker nervous. "They're afraid," Walker said, watching the growing fleet of observation ships on the main screen. "For the first time, they're seeing humanity as a potential threat to their power." Captain Reed nodded, counting the vessels. 15 capital ships now, and more arriving every hour. "The Alliance Council is demanding we hand over all our data about the paradox." The situation had grown tense. The Starseeker had received dozens of messages from various Alliance races, some offering huge rewards for exclusive access to the mysterious ship, others making thinly veiled threats. "Sir," Tom called out from his station, 3 more ships just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They're Earth ships." Everyone turned to watch as 3 human vessels approached. They were the newest ships Earth had, but they looked primitive compared to the paradox. Still, Their arrival changed everything. Now humanity had a real presence here. The lead Earth ship was the EDS Defender, commanded by Admiral William Stone. His face appeared on their screen, looking both excited and concerned. "Captain Reed, Dr. Walker," he said, "Earth Command has received your reports. We're here to help protect our interests in this discovery." Before they could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the Starseeker. Linda's voice was urgent as she reported, "The space around the paradox is becoming unstable again. The energy readings are off the charts." Walker rushed to his instruments. "No, this is different. The ship isn't becoming unstable. It's reacting to something. Something's coming." The space around the paradox began to twist and bend. Stars seemed to move in impossible ways, and sensors showed massive energy spikes. Then, without warning, a hole opened in space itself. "It's a dimensional rift," Walker shouted over the noise of scanning equipment going crazy, similar to what the paradox uses, but much bigger. Through the rift came something that made everyone's blood run cold. It was like a living shadow, bigger than any ship they had ever seen. Where it passed, space itself seemed to darken. "That's it," Walker whispered, his face pale. "That's the threat the other humanity warned us about. It followed the paradox's energy signature here." The alien thing moved with impossible speed, heading straight for the gathered fleet. Alliance ships began firing their weapons, but their most powerful shots passed right through the creature without effect. Then the paradox moved. For the first time since they found it, the mysterious warship came fully to life. Its hull blazed with blue-white energy, and weapons unlike anything they had ever seen emerged from hidden ports. "The ship's automated defense systems are activating," Walker said, reading the flood of data on his screens. "It's doing what it was built to do, protecting humanity." The paradox fired, and reality itself seemed to bend around its weapons. Beams of pure white light struck the shadow creature, and for the first time, they heard it scream. The sound shook their ships and made their sensors explode with static. "All ships, fall back," Admiral Stone ordered over the general channel. "Let the paradox handle this. Our weapons are useless against that thing." They watched in awe as the impossible warship engaged the creature in battle. The paradox moved with impossible grace, its weapons tearing holes in the shadow being substance. But the creature was powerful too, its attacks making space itself ripple and tear. "The paradox is downloading something to our computers," Linda reported. It's weapons data and shield designs." Walker rushed to examine the information. "The ship is showing us how to fight these things. Quick, transmit this data to the Earth ships." As they watched, the 3 Earth vessels began to glow with the same blue-white energy as the paradox. Their systems were adapting, changing, becoming more like the impossible warship. "Engineering reports our weapons are changing," Reed said, watching his own displays. "The paradox is upgrading us, preparing us to fight." The shadow creature seemed to realize what was happening. It turned its attention to the Earth ships, moving to attack them before they could complete their transformation. But the paradox intercepted it, its weapons blazing. The battle was like nothing they had ever seen. The paradox and the creature fought across dimensions, their conflict visible only in the way space bent and twisted around them. Normal weapons would have been useless, but the paradox's technology operated on a completely different level. Finally, with a sound that shook the universe, the paradox landed a killing blow. Its main weapon fired a beam of energy that seemed to unravel the very fabric of the creature's being. The shadow thing broke apart, its substance dissolving into nothing. But the victory came at a cost. The paradox's hull showed damage, its perfect surface scarred by the creature's attacks. More worrying were the readings from its power core. "The ship's quantum matrix is destabilizing," Walker reported, his voice urgent. "The battle damaged its reality-shifting systems. If we don't do something, it could tear apart space for light years around." Reed looked at his crew, then at the gathered fleet of Alliance and Earth ships. The paradox had just saved them all, and now it needed their help. "Dr. Walker," he said firmly, "what do we need to do?" Walker worked quickly at his console. "The shit's trying to teach us, even now. Look at these schematics. If we can channel enough power through the Earthship's new systems, we might be able to help stabilize the paradox." Admiral Stone's voice came over the comm. "Whatever you need, Doctor. That ship just saved humanity. Maybe saved the whole galaxy. We're not going to let it die now." The 3 Earth ships moved into position around the paradox, their newly upgraded systems glowing brightly. The Starseeker joined them, forming a perfect square around the damaged warship. "Channel all power to the new quantum stabilizers," Walker instructed. "The paradox will guide us. Just follow its lead." Energy began flowing between the ships, creating a web of light that held the paradox in place. The impossible warship's systems merged with theirs, showing them how to manipulate the fabric of space itself. "It's working," Walker said excitedly. "The paradox is stabilizing. But more than that, it's teaching us how to use its technology. This isn't just a rescue mission. It's humanity's first step toward becoming what we were meant to be." 3 days after the battle, representatives from every major alliance race gathered on a neutral space station to discuss what had happened. Humanity, once considered a minor power, now sat at the center of attention. The paradox floated nearby, repaired but changed, its impossible hull now bearing the scars of its victory. Dr. Walker stood before the gathered ambassadors, with Captain Reed and Admiral Stone by his side. The room was tense, filled with fear and confusion. Many races wanted the paradox destroyed, claiming it was too dangerous. Others wanted to claim it for themselves, hoping to unlock its secrets. "The paradox is not just a warship," Walker began, his voice steady despite the pressure. "It's a message from another version of humanity, a gift and a warning." He activated a holographic display showing the shadow creature they had fought. "This entity is just one of many. In the reality the paradox came from, these beings destroyed countless civilizations. They feed on stars, on planets, on life itself. And they exist in all realities, including ours." Murmurs filled the room as the implications sank in. Walker continued, "The other humanity fought them alone. They developed technologies beyond anything we can imagine, but it came too late. Their civilization fell, but not before they created the paradox, a ship designed to cross between realities and help other versions of humanity prepare." An ambassador from the Tellarites, one of the oldest alliance races, stood up. "Why humanity? Why not send this ship to more advanced races?" Admiral Stone answered this question. "Because in that reality, humanity proved to be uniquely adaptable. We approached problems differently, saw solutions where others saw only obstacles. The other humanity believed that was true of all versions of humanity across all realities." Walker nodded, bringing up new images showing the technical data they had recovered. "The paradox wasn't sent to give us weapons. It was sent to show us a different path, a different way of thinking about physics, about reality itself." The room grew quiet as Walker explained what they had learned. The paradox's technology wasn't just advanced, it was built on entirely different principles. It didn't fight against the laws of physics. It worked with them in ways no one had considered possible. "We're not asking for permission to use this technology," Admiral Stone said firmly. "The paradox has already decided that humanity is ready. Its systems are responding to human operators, teaching us, guiding us." This statement caused an uproar. The Alliance had always maintained strict controls over technological development, claiming it was for everyone's safety. The idea that humanity might suddenly leap centuries ahead terrified many of the older races. "Enough." The voice came from the Arcturian ambassador, one of the most respected members of the Alliance. "We all saw what happened. That thing would have destroyed us all if not for the paradox. If similar threats exist, we need to be ready." The debate continued for hours, with arguments going back and forth. Finally, a compromise was reached. Humanity would be allowed to study the paradox, but under Alliance observation. Any technologies developed would be shared, though humanity would maintain primary control of the ship itself. As the meeting ended, Reed found Walker staring out a viewport at the scared warship. "Not the outcome you hoped for?" Reed asked. Walker smiled slightly. "Actually, it's exactly what I expected. The other humanity knew this would happen. The Paradox's database predicted it all. The fear, the political maneuvering, everything. And they sent the ship anyway." Reed seemed confused. "Yes, because they also predicted what comes next." Walker's smile grew wider. "The Paradox isn't just teaching us about technology, Captain. It's teaching us about responsibility, about cooperation. The ship is designed to work best when all races contribute their knowledge." Reed looked back at the impossible warship. In the days since the battle, its appearance had changed subtly. The damage was repaired, but its surface now showed patterns that reflected the contributions of Alliance races who had helped stabilize it. "The ship is adapting," Walker explained, following Reed's gaze. "It's incorporating the best ideas from everyone who studies it. That's what the other humanity wanted, not for us to dominate the galaxy, but to lead it towards something better." Back on Earth, the impact of the Paradox's discovery was already being felt. Universities worldwide were studying the data, finding new insights in every line of code, every strange equation. The ship's quantum computing principles alone had sparked a revolution in information technology. 6 months after the discovery, the first Earth ship built using Paradox principles was ready for testing. It was smaller than traditional vessels, but incorporated technologies that seemed like magic to most observers. Its engines didn't burn fuel. They manipulated space itself. Its hull wasn't made of metal, but of materials that could think and adapt. Walker stood on the bridge of this new ship, the EDS Unity, as it prepared for its first flight. Captain Reed had been given command, with Linda serving as his science officer and Tom as his navigator. The rest of the crew was equally balanced between humans and representatives from other Alliance races. "All systems ready, Captain," Linda reported, her fingers moving across controls unlike any seen before in the Alliance. "The Paradox is standing by to escort us." Reed nodded, looking out at the impossible warship that now served as humanity's teacher and protector. "Take us out, Mr. Parker. Easy speed until we clear Earth orbit." The Unity moved smoothly, its systems working in perfect harmony. Unlike traditional ships, there was no vibration, no sense of movement. Space simply shifted around them, carrying the vessel forward with elegant precision. As they cleared orbit, the Paradox moved alongside them, its scared hull gleaming in the sunlight. For just a moment, Walker thought he saw something, like ghostly figures standing on the impossible warship's bridge, watching them with approval. "We're ready for the jump to faster than light," Tom announced. "The Paradox has transmitted the coordinates." Reed turned to Walker. "Doctor, would you like to give the order? None of this would have been possible without you." Walker shook his head. "No, Captain, this isn't about individuals anymore." The other humanity understood that. Their greatest achievement wasn't building an impossible ship. It was learning to work together in ways we're only beginning to understand. Reed nodded, appreciating the sentiment. "Unity, prepare for dimensional jump. Let's see what lessons the universe has to teach us." As the ship's new engines powered up, creating a corridor through space-time itself, Walker looked back at Earth growing smaller behind them. The Paradox had changed everything, not by making humanity powerful, but by showing them their potential. It had given them a glimpse of what they could become if they chose the right path. The Unity slipped into faster-than-light travel, following the Paradox into the unknown. This wasn't an ending, Walker realized, but a beginning. The impossible warship hadn't just saved them from one threat. It had prepared them for a future filled with both dangers and wonders beyond imagination. And as they traveled through the stars, the story of the ship that shouldn't exist, but did spread throughout the galaxy, becoming a symbol of hope and possibility for all who heard it. The Paradox had done what its creators intended. It had changed everything, not through force, but through inspiration.